Lyria perched on the jagged cliff, her long ears twitching with the faint vibrations of the twin suns as they danced across the horizon, painting Clithera in hues that were neither warm nor comforting. She traced the horizon with her eyes, though she had seen it countless times, every crater, every scar in the land, and yet today it felt heavier. The regime had decreed her end, not with the subtlety of diplomacy but with the certainty of an inevitable execution, as if the universe had paused and pointed a finger and said, You are finished." She exhaled, a quiet sound that barely disturbed the thick, electric air. Humor had left her life long ago, leaving only a hollow sort of efficiency. Survival was less about hope and more about moving pieces in a game that had already declared her checkmate. She heard it before she saw it, the clattering, awkward rhythm of footsteps on uneven rock. At first, she assumed it was the wind interacting with the sharp mineral formations, or perhaps some scavenging creature, though the last of those had been vaporized by the heat storms weeks ago. Then she noticed the shadow, clumsy, irregular, and distinctly human. The human stumbled over the rocks like a newborn Clitheran gazelle attempting flight for the first time, arms flailing, and Lyria's initial impulse was irritation. But then, just as quickly, a smile threatened the corners of her mouth. Not a smile of warmth, more of incredulous amusement. "Careful," she called, her voice carrying across the stone plateau with a resonance that made it sound like the wind itself was speaking. "These cliffs have a habit of eating the unprepared, or the foolish." The human froze mid-trip, looking up with wide eyes and a sheepish grin. "Right," he said, voice oddly melodic against the harshness of the rock. "Foolish, that's me. Definitely foolish. Didn't see you there, I'm Marcus." Lyria tilted her head. Marcus, the human. Not the first she had seen, though humans usually came equipped with a sense of self-importance and a blaster before curiosity. Marcus had neither. He had instead what she quickly registered as a highly refined talent for tripping over absolutely everything. "Marcus," she repeated, almost tasting the word. "I suppose that is your name. And your survival strategy is," she waved vaguely at the ground he nearly kissed. "What, hoping the terrain spares you?" Marcus laughed nervously, brushing dust from his jacket. "Something like that, mostly hoping gravity has mercy." His grin was disarmingly unprofessional for someone who might soon be crushed or fried by a desert storm or both simultaneously. Lyria shook her head, and for reasons she did not fully understand, felt the faintest lift of something she hadn't acknowledged in years. Curiosity. Over the next few hours, Lyria discovered Marcus's capacity to bewilder her was matched only by his capacity to annoy. He asked questions that were somehow both irrelevant and profoundly human. Do Clitherans always live in caves, or is this a lifestyle choice? He inquired while they navigated a narrow canyon lined with metallic spires that hummed faintly, a remnant of some ancient alien technology. Do humans always talk while potentially being sliced in half by resonant energy fields? She countered, voice low enough that the spires didn't vibrate but loud enough for him to hear. He chuckled. "Only when it keeps me from panicking. Works about 63% of the time." Lyria found herself shaking her head again. Humor, she realized, was creeping back into her consciousness, and it felt strangely defiant, as if the universe's certainty about her demise could be momentarily ignored. She led him to a hidden cache, a series of tunnels etched into crystalline stone that glowed faintly when touched, remnants of a civilization long extinct. Marcus tripped in again, knocking over a small container of bioluminescent spores that scattered like green fireflies. "Great," he muttered. "I think I just angered the ancient ghosts of Clithera." "You did not anger them," Lyria replied, trying not to laugh. "You merely disturbed their sense of personal space. They are remarkably sensitive about it." By the time they reached the innermost chamber, where maps of star systems and projections of energy flows floated in midair like captured constellations, Lyria felt something she hadn't felt since before the regime's edicts began. The weight of inevitability lift, however slightly. Marcus moved with a blend of clumsy admiration and utter fascination, tapping holographic images and asking questions that bordered on the absurd. So, do these star charts come with a user manual, or is it more of a touch everything and pray system? Lyria's ears twitched, a small, involuntary gesture that betrayed her amusement. More the latter, she said dryly, though your method seems surprisingly compatible. As the suns dipped closer to the horizon, painting the chamber in iridescent gold, Lyria realized that perhaps her resignation was not as absolute as she had thought. A human, unpredictable and chaotic, had stumbled into her ordered world, and for reasons she could not articulate, she found herself unwilling to let go entirely of the fragile hope he carried with him. And so, the alien who had accepted her end, the woman who had mapped her final days with meticulous precision, allowed herself, just for a moment, to imagine that perhaps, just perhaps, she might yet alter the course of destiny. Lyria led Marcus through the labyrinthine tunnels beneath Clithera, each turn and archway humming with dormant energy that pulsed faintly beneath her fingertips. Marcus, as usual, found a way to make even the most perilous environment comical. "Do you think these tunnels have a concierge service?" he asked, stepping on a glowing panel that made the walls ripple with shifting light. "Because I feel like we're supposed to check in somewhere. Maybe a holographic lobby." "Concierge service," Lyria repeated, one eyebrow arching, her long ears twitching as she struggled to suppress a laugh. "Yes, very practical. I will instruct the ancient defense systems to provide you with towels and complimentary tea before they vaporize you." Marcus grinned sheepishly, brushing past a holographic map that projected the twisting network above them. "I'll take my tea hot with sugar, extra sugar. I've had a rough morning." Lyria found herself shaking her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. The human had an infuriating way of breaking the solemn rhythm of survival with absurdity. But she could not deny that his presence, chaotic as it was, had already begun to dissolve the tight coil of resignation that had gripped her for years. They emerged into a cavern larger than any natural formation should allow, walls lined with spires of translucent crystal that hummed softly, resonating with the energy of the planet itself. The air shimmered with faint holographic symbols, a silent testimony to the civilization that had once thrived here. Marcus, eyes wide, stepped cautiously, then promptly tripped over a protruding root-like formation and landed on his back, flailing. "Marcus," Lyria said, exasperated, though there was warmth in her tone, "gravity is not your friend today." "Gravity and I are on complicated terms," he muttered, rolling to his feet. "I think it resents me. Or maybe it's just your planet's sense of humor." Lyria allowed herself a small, genuine laugh. Humor, she realized, was not just a distraction. It was a form of resistance, a refusal to be entirely broken by the weight of the regime and the inevitability she had once accepted. They moved deeper into the cavern, where ancient machines hummed and shifted, their purpose unclear but undeniably powerful. Marcus, ever curious, reached out to touch one of the smooth, metallic surfaces. A holographic display flared to life, casting constellations and orbital charts in the air. "Whoa," he breathed. "This is like a starship bridge without the ship. Or, wait, maybe it's a starship bridge that forgot it was a ship." "You could say that," Lyria replied, her tone flat, though the corners of her mouth quirked upward. "It is a repository, a place of knowledge, and if you are not careful, a place of severe injury." Marcus waved a hand. "Got it. Repository of danger. Check. That's right up my alley." He stepped closer to another hologram, nearly knocking over a floating orb of light that spiraled with strange, alien symbols. "I mean, do these things ever get dusted, or is dusting an intergalactic offense?" "You are testing patience," Lyria said, though her voice betrayed amusement. "Patience I no longer thought I possessed. Perhaps your human chaos has a redeeming quality after all." Hours passed as they explored the tunnels, Marcus continuously marveling, tripping, and asking questions that ranged from practical to absurd. Lyria found herself explaining ancient energy conduits, the dangers of resonant fields, and the principles of Clithera's semi-sentient flora, all while keeping a running commentary on Marcus's near-constant clumsiness. At one point, they encountered a sentient flora, tall, silver-leafed plants that reacted to touch with electrical pulses. Marcus, fascinated, reached out to pet one, eliciting a mild shock that sent him skidding backward into Lyria's arms. "Okay," he said, rubbing his shoulder, "maybe they don't like compliments." "They do not appreciate human curiosity," Lyria said, her tone dry, but there was a note of laughter beneath it. "They are sensitive. Much like you, apparently." As the day progressed, Lyria noticed a subtle shift within herself. Marcus's humor, his relentless questioning, and his odd combination of recklessness and genuine concern made her realize that resignation was no longer her only option. Even as the regime's forces spread through Clithera's cities, enforcing edicts of fear, the tunnels, this secret world beneath the planet, felt alive again, energized not just by the technology of the past, but by the unpredictable energy Marcus carried with him. They reached a chamber at the cavern's heart, where crystalline columns converged into a pulsating sphere of energy. Marcus approached it, fingers extended, fascination plain in his expression. "This," he said, voice low, "this feels like it's waiting for something, or someone, probably someone smarter than me." Lyria stepped forward, placing a hand on the sphere. A low hum filled the chamber, the energy rippling outward, brushing against their skin with a sensation both alien and familiar. "It is waiting," she said, "for someone who understands it. Or at least, someone brave enough to stumble through and not immediately destroy it." Marcus, grinning, shrugged. "I'll take brave enough, sounds like my kind of plan." The sphere pulsed again, brighter this time, as if responding to their combined presence. Lyria felt a cautious thrill, a stirring she had not permitted herself in years. For the first time, the inevitability of doom did not press against her ribs like a stone. There was laughter, yes, and chaos and human clumsiness, but there was also possibility. The presence of this one human, ridiculous and persistent, had begun to rewrite the narrative she had so meticulously plotted for herself. As they left the cavern, the twin suns dipping behind jagged horizons, Marcus turned to her, still grinning despite dust and scratches. "So, what's next? Secret alien relics, sentient plants, rogue energy spheres. Am I forgetting anything?" "You will forget many things," Lyria replied, a note of amusement in her voice. "But not the part where you nearly die every 5 minutes. That I will ensure." And as they stepped into the cooling light of Clithera, Lyria felt a small, unsteady hope unfurling inside her. Marcus, with all his human imperfections, had turned her resignation into something fragile and thrilling. The possibility that even in the darkest tunnels, laughter and courage could coexist, and that the story of her life was no longer written in finality. The regime arrived at dawn, their ships cutting through Clithera's hazy atmosphere like jagged metal birds, engines whining in a perfect, terrifying harmony. Lyria and Marcus had anticipated this day, though neither had expected it to feel so imminently absurd and dangerous at once. Marcus was crouched behind a crystalline column, fiddling with a device that looked suspiciously like it had been cobbled together from a toaster, a holographic projector, and what he claimed was a very patient alien artifact. "So," he said, grinning nervously, "do you think they'll notice if I accidentally summon a holographic marching band instead of a defense protocol?" Lyria rolled her eyes, though her lips twitched in amusement. "If you summon a marching band, they will notice. They will notice immediately and then probably shoot you anyway. Proceed with caution." Marcus saluted mockingly, clearly unfazed by the implied threat. "Noted, General Lyria. Marching band strictly optional." Outside, the regime's troops deployed with precision, their energy rifles glowing ominously. But inside the tunnels, Lyria and Marcus moved with a fluid familiarity, anticipating traps and pitfalls as if the labyrinth itself recognized them as temporary allies. Lyria's long ears twitched, sensing the subtle vibrations of approaching forces. Marcus, meanwhile, tripped over a cable and almost set off a minor explosion, but recovered with a grin. "See, practice makes perfect," he said, dusting himself off. "Perfectly alive," Lyria corrected, which he took as encouragement. They reached the heart of the cavern where the pulsating energy sphere waited, humming in anticipation. Lyria placed a hand on its surface, feeling the surge of raw power that resonated with the planet. Marcus, predictably, tried to imitate her, pressing his fingers against the glowing mass. The sphere shimmered, then split its energy outward in intricate patterns, forming a web of force that seemed to anticipate the regime's every move. "Okay," Marcus said, stepping back. "So either we just became intergalactic wizards or I really shouldn't have touched it with sticky fingers." "You did touch it with sticky fingers," Lyria said flatly, but a corner of her mouth lifted. "And yet, remarkably, we are still alive." The regime's forces breached the cavern entrance, firing energy pulses that ricocheted off crystalline walls in a dazzling display of light. Lyria guided Marcus through the ancient mechanisms, activating switches, levers, and alien panels with a fluidity born of knowledge and desperation. Marcus's improvisations, often ridiculous, sometimes reckless, worked in strange synchrony with Lyria's precision. One moment, a floating defense drone hovered to intercept a volley. The next, Marcus accidentally triggered a holographic decoy army that marched directly into the invaders' line of sight. "Wait," Marcus said, eyes wide as the holograms collided with the real soldiers. "This is amazing. I mean, terrifying but amazing." Lyria couldn't help herself. She laughed, a sound that was half disbelief, half relief. "You really have no idea how useful your chaos can be," she said, scanning the energy flows. "Or how horrifyingly lucky we are." By the time the final wave of the regime reached the chamber, the combination of Lyria's precise manipulation and Marcus's erratic creativity had turned the cavern into a maze of energy fields, holographic soldiers, and pulsing traps that disoriented and repelled their attackers. Marcus, still grinning despite singed sleeves, ducked behind Lyria. "So, do you think the We Survive team is going to get a bonus? Like, maybe a planet named after us?" Lyria smirked. "Only if we survive, Marcus. Only if we survive." With a final, synchronized move, Lyria activated the sphere fully, sending a pulse of energy that cascaded through the tunnels, overwhelming the invaders' technology. The regime's forces faltered, confused and immobilized, their advance halted. Outside, the ships shuddered and retreated, leaving Clithera bathed in the quiet hum of victory. Marcus leaned against a crystalline column, catching his breath. "Well," he said, "that was dramatic and exhausting. Also, I think I broke 3 bones and my dignity." "You did not break your dignity," Lyria replied, voice dry but warm. "You merely tested the limits of human resilience." He grinned. "I'll take that as a compliment." As the dust settled, Lyria looked around the cavern, the energy sphere now calm, radiating a steady light. She realized, in a way she hadn't allowed herself to believe before, that her resignation to doom had been shattered, not by strategy or force, but by the unpredictable, stubborn persistence of one human who refused to fit neatly into her carefully measured life. "Marcus," she said quietly,